Welcome to Drone TV. I'm your host, Patrick Egan. The SUAS News hopes that this series will help to educate and inspire this community and also the general public about the use of unmanned aircraft systems for public good. This week's guest is Mr. Gene Robinson. For those of you that don't know Gene Robinson, he is also my co-host on the SUAS News podcast. I would call Gene an expert in the SAR field. He's got about 7 or 8 years of experience doing SAR with small unmanned aircraft.
Hello, Patrick, and thank you for having me on the show.
Gene, how did you get started using small unmanned aircraft systems for SAR work?
Well, Patrick, we began by building the wing to do aerial photography. And as we got better at aerial photography, we wanted to educate people on that aerial perspective. So we thought that perhaps if we got into the search and rescue end of it, we could educate not only the general public as to what we could do with aerial photography, we could also give a little back to the community.
Gene, could you tell us how long you've actually been at this, say professionally?
Well, our ground zero was 2005. We did a search very early on, and it formed a lot of the philosophy that we use now. So from 2005, that's 8 years, and I've got to tell you, we have covered a lot of ground since then. We've learned more than I could possibly tell you in a small segment like this, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to spread this information around for the good and the use of UA.
You also wrote a book, the definitive small UAS guide to SAR called First to Deploy. Could you tell us a little about it?
It was interesting because we had been on so many missions and we'd been to so many different interesting places all over the world actually, that I was encouraged by folks to write down some of my memoirs and some of the more interesting missions that we'd been on. And I got to thinking about it, and it seemed like a good vehicle to not only tell a little bit about what we've done, but to also provide a little bit more information as to how an unmanned aircraft could be used for search and rescue and for law enforcement. I was trying to portray the unmanned aircraft in as many ways as possible and spark the imaginations of my audience so that they could see the positive uses and what you could potentially use an unmanned aircraft for.
Can you tell us a little about your most memorable search?
One of my most memorable searches actually occurred in Jamaica. And while it was an unsuccessful search, it was very exciting in that, as you can well imagine, that the technology that we brought out there hadn't been seen too often. And the obvious offers for Jamaica's prime product were plentiful. We had to turn them down.
You were featured in the Civilian Drone movie. Can you tell us a little about the feedback you're getting?
The movie was a very interesting endeavor for us, and it seemed like a logical extension to the book in video format. We wanted to try to portray the safety. We wanted to try to portray the effort that we had put forth to try to make it as safe as possible, and the effort that we put forth to try to work within the guidelines that we were given. And we think it portrayed that very well. I mean, we are still frustrated and we are still working diligently to try to correct that situation, but the movie has really helped to spark interest and, more importantly, spark a lot of support.
Any feedback from the FAA?
Well, actually, no. We haven't gotten any feedback from the Federal Aviation Administration, and I honestly didn't expect any. I actually forwarded my book to some of the folks in the FAA, and I've never got a comment on it either, so I'm not surprised.
I saw that you were quoted in the USA Today and some other publications. Anything from industry publications?
We were included in the inaugural issue of Park Rangers, which is a periodical for the National Park Service Rangers, and quite surprisingly, they do quite a bit of search and rescue work in the national parks. But other than that, most of the industry media has not really responded too positively to the story that we have tried to put forth.
Well, I should probably give the website again for anyone who hasn't seen the documentary. It's civiliandronesmovie.com. civiliandronesmovie.com. Any truth in the rumors that DreamWorks was going to do a film?
DreamWorks did start the negotiations with my agent, but apparently they fell through, and we had to fall back to Pixar, and it's going to be a cartoon.
So what was this about Clooney not being available to play you?
You know, Clooney was, I talked with him, and he's a nice guy and all, but he just didn't see it.
Well, let's talk about some of the nuts and bolts of what you do.
There is a science to search and rescue, and I have gotten heavily involved in the science and the psychology of missing people, and it is very interesting, but there's a lot to keep up with. And as a specialty, we really want to just concentrate on flying and collecting the data, and we are slowly evolving to that, but in that process, we have to teach people what we are trying to do and what to do with the data once we get it. And that can be a tremendous process, but it's one that people take to very naturally and they want to help with. So it's nice to have that sort of enthusiasm when you're moving into a field that could be quite life-changing for many families.
Interesting. So you use a flying wing. I know you're a real proponent of using the flying wing. Could you tell us why?
One of the things that we discovered in the field is the less moving parts you had, the less chance for failure you had. The flying wing has 2 control surfaces, 2 servos, 1 motor. It is very easy for us to break it down, pack it into a very remote location, build it up, launch it, fly the mission, come back down, and be on our way to the next area of interest. So the flying wing has ended up being a very portable, very rugged, and a very capable system in flying in a lot of different environments, from rain to wind, to high winds, to altitudes. So we've stuck with it, and it's worked very well for us.
And Gene, is it possible that you could walk us through your field kit?
This is basically what is required for me to go out into the field to fly. I have my computer that's hooked up via radio modem to my airplane, which you see here fully assembled. I have my ground control unit, which allows me to take over control at any time if necessary during the flight. And I have a flight pack, and that's about all I need to get into the air. Of course, I can decide which sensor I'm going to fly. This particular flight will be flying the Panasonic Lumix 10 megapixel still imager, which we use for mapping and we use in our search and rescue.
You use the Robota autopilot system. Why?
Well, I've got to tell you, Patrick, we've been through several autopilots and several guidance systems, and I have just been amazed at how easy it is to set up this particular autopilot in our airframe, and it has done a yeoman's job for us. It has completed its missions, and it has done it well, and we just can't say enough about how easy it is to operate this system.
I've seen the Robota system in person, but could you please kind of run us through the features of this system?
One of the things that I feared while we were doing manually flying the aircraft was that if we left a gap in the pictures as we flew it, could we potentially miss a victim? And I got to tell you, I lost a little sleep over that. The Robota guarantees that I'm going to take a picture and get an overlap of 50% on each picture, both in the horizontal and the longitudinal axis. And that makes me feel a lot better as a searcher. And one of the really nice things about the Robota is that it does a grid pattern search based on both your altitude and the field of view of the camera. And you can tell it what percentage you want to overlap each one of those images.
How about the Robota website address?
Yes, Patrick, that is a very easy website. It's robota.us.
Think we might get a Small Unmanned Systems SAR overview workshop at the Small Unmanned Systems Business Expo in May?
I think that it would be a very good topic to do a workshop on. I think you'd have a lot of participants, And I would be happy to work with anyone who wants to put that workshop on.
Good. I'll be in the front row. How do the loved ones of lost people find you?
Our website is www.rpsearchservices.org. We have been contacted directly by the families, especially since the movie has come out and the book has come out. We are also contacted by other search organizations, such as Texas EquiSearch, who use our technology because they simply don't have it, and it covers a lot of territory, a lot of geography very quickly, and it helps ensure the safety of their ground searchers. Law enforcement has contacted us directly, and they recognize that in a search situation that time is of the essence and minutes can mean life or death.
Is it true that this has kind of developed into a family affair?
It really has, Patrick. When you consider that I met my wife, Angelique, on a search for a missing individual in the Sierra Nevadas, it sort of grew on both of us. And Patrick, I'd like to introduce you to my most valuable team member, Angelique.
Hi, Patrick. Thank you for having us on.
So Angelique is an active participant in your work.
Yes, Patrick, Angelique is a very valuable member of the team. While I go out and fly the aircraft and collect the data and do the imaging, there are a lot of other responsibilities of the team that have to be taken care of, and Angelique is the one that takes care of those.
I lived in San Diego when I met Jean, and while in San Diego, I volunteered for the trauma intervention program. We were trained to go toward trauma, go toward the victim, go toward the person who's in need. And that's what I try to do. It's emotional support, and it's also practical support. A lot of it is just talking to them and looking at pictures of their family members, their lost loved ones. Well, Gene flies the spectra. He maps out where he needs to fly. I map out search areas for the foot searchers and put together teams and deploy them.
And what a lot of people don't understand is that while I go out and fly, she deals with a lot of the administrative, the interfacing with the police, the interfacing with the family, interfacing with the media that would put an additional load on me. And that load is gone when she is there doing her job.
Could you set this clip up and tell us what's going on?
Specifically in the case of Devin Davis, it was very rugged territory. It was a river bottom. It was very swampy. We had very limited access. Even the full-scale helicopters would only come in very narrow areas to look. And as we flew that, it was Angelique poring over a computer that found the small object that ended up being Devin Davis's body.
It was very powerful knowing that our technology was able to find this little boy and deliver him back to his parents. They were beside themselves. We were called on day 5 of the search. What if we would have been called on day 1? What if we would have been called in the first few hours? Little Devin may have still been walking down the road. I think it's important that the UA tool be used early in the search and it be used often in searches. I know the FAA has restrictions. I've been standing next to Gene when he gets his phone call, and they've told him, "You've been flying this weekend." Well, he went flying and he found a little boy. How can that be wrong? But according to the regulations, that was wrong. As a mother, I asked the FAA, if it were your child, what would you do?
It's guys like you, I think, that are going to change public opinion about small unmanned aircraft or drones and the good things that they can do. Well, thanks a lot for being on, Gene. Appreciate it, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks for having me on the show, Patrick. Be happy to come back anytime.
For everyone here at SUS News, thanks for watching. If you have any comments or questions or ideas for shows, feel free to email us at susnews.com. Again, I'm your host, Patrick Egan, and thanks for watching.